3, 2, 1. Eat what you kill. Hey HuntChef Nation, have we got a recipe for you today? Pan-fried venison cutlet dish going together tonight on some grilled apple buttermilk whipped potatoes. We're gonna caramelize these onions and these chicken of the woods mushrooms. We're gonna put together a Sportsman feast that you're not gonna wanna miss. These are out of the hind leg, and you know, instead of cutting that big hind leg steak, we've boned this out, cleaned it up, and made these delicious looking cutlets. Now, it's still not gonna eat like backstrap, so that's why we're gonna take our jacquard. So this guy has a bunch of little knives in there and it squishes up and down. So we're gonna take this first cutlet and just go over it. And what we're gonna do, these knives are cutting through that meat tissue, tenderizing and also making holes in the meat for the seasoning to get into. So between tenderizing, you're also gonna help flavor this thing from the inside out all the way through it. Then what we're gonna do, you're gonna take a hammer. Now we're gonna use this meat mallet here tonight. You could use something heavy like this Bond's Creek cleaver. You could use a saute pan, a saucepan, your fist if you're up for it, whatever the case might be. Another thing, if you're at home, you wanna minimize the mess, you could have plastic wrap down, lay the cutlet on that. But once you have it jacquarded well, both sides, you're gonna take that mallet. And you know, mine is a little bit bigger. We use this day to day at the butcher shop. But you're just gonna take it and hold it flat, because what you don't wanna do is hit it on an angle and then you're only using this bottom part. So you're gonna go flat. So we didn't show any mercy to this cut of venison, and you can see now where it started to where it is, and you know it's gonna be a lot more tender. So I'm gonna pair up this pan-fried venison with one of my signatures, which is a grilled apple buttermilk whipped red skin potato. So red skin potatoes, they come in a lot of different sizes. This is probably kind of a large, but these ones here, I love to cook them whole. But when they're this big, cut them in half, put them in the salted water, boil them till they're tender, and then we're gonna mash them up with our grilled red apples. So one of my favorite wild mushrooms that's super edible, easy to find, locate, identify to make sure you're not gonna get sick or, you know, worse, is chicken of the woods mushrooms. And some folks think they smell like chickens. Some folks think they taste like chickens. I think they taste delicious. What we're gonna do is chop these guys up, slice up these onions. We're gonna caramelize both of them low and slow with some butter and some of my Canadian Carnivore seasoning to top off our buttermilk pan-fried venison cutlet. To make these cutlets extra delicious, we're gonna start with some buttermilk. We're gonna need some all-purpose flour. We're gonna season that flour with some HuntChef 10-ring wild game grill rub. So once you've got plenty of 10-ring in the flour, you're gonna take a whisk and mix that into the flour, get it incorporated really well, and we're ready to batter these guys up. So all tenderized, we're gonna get them in the flour, make sure, get it all the way around. We're gonna shake off any excess, tap it, pat it, whatever you gotta do. Then we're gonna lay it down into the buttermilk, tap it, get it turned over, shake it, get the excess buttermilk off of there, right back into that 10-ring wild game grill rub seasoned flour, flip it over, get the other side, make sure you're putting a nice crust on there. Don't pinch it too tight or you pull that crust right off. When you're battering cutlets or chicken breast, even zucchini to fry at home, anything like that, when you're using the buttermilk, it provides obviously that tang and that flavor, but it really helps to coat and help the breading stick. And as long as it's protected by this second layer, it won't burn on you when you're pan frying or deep frying with it. So we're working really fast on these apples, because what I don't want to do is have them get oxygenated and turn all brown on us. So right now we're all cut up. We're gonna toss them with a little bit of canola oil, some 10-ring grill rub, and we're gonna put them in a grill pan and caramelize both sides, take them out, chop them up, and fold them into our buttermilk whipped red skin potatoes. They're super tender, still hot. Now you can absolutely mix these guys up, you know, with a hand masher, and they'll come out fantastic. But what we're gonna do here tonight is mash them up in the KitchenAid so we can whip them and get some extra air whipped into them. We're gonna pour in the buttermilk now. So the potatoes are super hot, just came out of the water. The buttermilk's cold, just came out of the fridge, so we want to work fast before the potatoes cool off too much and that starch starts to get gluey until they start to smooth. That looks great right there. Now it's time for the butter. It's mostly softened about room temperature. Now we've got just some kosher salt. All right, we've got our mashed potatoes ready. We've got these grilled red delicious apples ready. Look at the color on these things. And you know that color, that caramelization is gonna equal flavor. Now, putting apples in whipped potatoes might sound crazy, but everybody knows the pairing fruit, especially roasted fruits, grilled fruits, with venison, with any wild game, has been around as long as there's been people cooking wild game. Feel free, take any recipe you see here, make it your own, make it your family story, how you enjoy your harvest, and bring the whole thing full circle. So in this pan, we just cooked these chicken of the woods mushrooms and onions. So crispy, caramelized, delicious, but you can't have country fried buttermilk venison cutlets without gravy. So now it's time to make the gravy. So you see we've got the extra butter in the pan. So we're gonna add just enough flour to make ourselves a blonde roux out of the leftover butter. And we start all that flavor in the pan from caramelizing. So what we wanna do is stir this till it starts to make a roux and that paste comes together. We wanna get all that flour hydrated with the fat in the pan so that it can help thicken. So that's looking great. As soon as we get this little bit more flour hydrated, we've got some beef stock we're gonna add in. So the gravy's simmering away, and that's one of the things when you work with roux, there's flour in there. And while it's hydrated in that fat, you wanna simmer it in that broth, in that stock, and cook the flour out, cook that dry stuff out. We're gonna season it up with some of my Canadian Carnivore. Be nice and liberal, because we're gonna take this flavor all the way to the plate. So we're gonna use some rendered beef tallow to pan fry our venison cutlets in. Now you can use canola oil, any type of shortening that you prefer. You can drop these guys in a deep fryer if you want, but we're gonna do them on the stove top, and you don't wanna be shy. Now, one of the things I like about rendered beef tallow is it has a super high smoke point. It's all natural. Yes, there's some cholesterol in it, but there's cholesterol in everything. But the flavor is what we're going for here. So the thing about pan frying, and especially at home or at camp, is you really can't do it any wrong way. But when you're doing it over a burner like this, the center of the pan is gonna have the most heat, more heat than out around the edges. So I've spun these cutlets a couple of times to try and keep that cooking process, that browning process even the whole way around. But if it's not hot enough, you're gonna have a soggy crust. If it's too hot, you're gonna have a burnt crust and maybe even a grease fire, which nobody wants. So you want that solid medium to medium low heat. You wanna make sure your breading's good. And you wanna wait till just the right time for golden brown, wild game perfection, just like that. We're finally ready to put together our pan-fried venison cutlets. We've got our grilled apple whipped potatoes right here, piping hot, and we're gonna make an awesome bed right down the middle of this plate. Until you make these grilled apple whipped potatoes, you're not gonna know the smell that's coming out of that bowl right now. It has hosted quail, venison, all sorts of wild game. This is gonna be an awesome dish. I cannot wait to tear into it. Those guys are done, the gravy's on. Now our venison cutlets, still crispy, beautiful, hot, right out of the frying pan. Now finally, we've got these sauteed, caramelized chicken of the woods mushrooms, the onions in there. Talk about layers of flavor. We're gonna top it all off. Come right down the top of our cutlets. Look at that. You talk about wild, you talk about big, you talk about bold flavors. We've got them all going on right here. I think we've knocked it out of the park here today. We've got these buttermilk pan-fried venison cutlets, the grilled apple whipped potatoes, the Canadian Carnivore pan gravy, and these foraged chicken of the woods mushrooms and caramelized onions. You talk about layers of flavor, you talk about big wild flavor, this is it right here. You're watching Hunt Chef on Mountaintop Outdoors. Remember, always eat what you kill. We done? We good? Can I eat it now? Okay. So I've been dying to tear into this thing for like 15 minutes now. I just want to bite, one bite. Gravy, potatoes, mushrooms, onions, gravy. There we go. Home run, baby.